it's on. Thank you. Thank you, Arun. And the sharks from the Shark Tanks are here. I think they left some fish there, 3 of them. So welcome formally again. We had a long chat before that with Mitali and with Nitin. Ankit I have known for quite some time by now, so thank you coming to Tridents. What we are trying to discuss is how is this decision intelligence changing our industry and across industry, how do we see it? So that's the topic that we are trying to discuss. And I'll open it up the question. Let me give a little bit of background. What do we mean by decision intelligence? So today, the systems are being built which are like very definitive type system, right? You take a data, you produce an output, right? So if I have to do a transaction, the payment has gone, it's credited to somebody else, or it's not credited. So it's a very definite systems. Now we are talking about building systems which are very probabilistic in nature, right? So I want to do a planning of producing something in my factory to ship to market. Now I want to see what is my confidence level to ship on a particular date and what is the best date for the best confidence level based on my scheduling. Now building systems like this is very complicated. Having customer experience, I think Mitali and I were discussing, now people want everything in 10 minutes. Or maybe they want car in 10 minutes. How can you predict how much time will take for a commodity or a car to get delivered? Now this is a very unique phenomena. The consumer behavior is changing. Maybe something started with COVID, some supply chain disruption that happened. And net new systems are being enabled by a broad term of Gen AI, which is now called agentic AI. Now, if we have to build new systems like this, I mean, there is going to be a significant challenge in terms of business adoption, in terms of how do we ensure that we build scale systems like this. So, and then I will start with maybe Mitali, you are in Philips right now, and you're looking at a lot of manufacturing discussion we are having in terms of what's happening with the business. So if we have to build new AI systems which are like decision intelligence, what would be the primary focus? And you can refer to Philips or you can give a generic based on your exposure to industry. Is this focus more on sales, increasing sales? That's where this new Gen AI intelligent systems needs to be there? Or is the focus more on the cost side? Like get me the more bottom line. Like sales is of course going to improve profitability. But what's the focus area if you look at from building this kind of intelligent system?
Thank you for the question and thank you for having me. And it's really nice to meet all the fellow panelists. And I and you had a lot of discussion before this panel as well. In my opinion, the way we are seeing things, and AI has become a hot word, a buzzword, everybody wants to apply it in the business to make their customers happy. So what we are seeing, in terms of processes of doing a business, there are a lot of manual interventions and dependencies that every process has. So AI is significantly bringing cost savings in true sense wherever it is getting implemented in Gen AI, co-pilots, any kind of a bot which can seamlessly connect your structured data with an unstructured data, and as soon as you ask a question, rather than flipping 10 pages of the document, you get your answers faster to make a contract and a deal. You save time in making that quotation for the end customer or creating that contract you want to submit to get the deal done. So from that perspective, we are seeing significant time savings in the bottom line, in the cost side of it. However, it is also making people more and more error-free because you are able to make use of AI technology to read things right. At the end, you know what you are giving to the customer is more accurate. You have more confidence. So that way you are upskilling your own people, you are bringing their intelligence. And hence, when things are falling in place right, the customer is also happy. That okay, as a Philips or as a company, you are able to Give me this thing now, which used to take 30 days to give me a contract and a final quotation. You're able to give it to me now in 10 days. It's a big relief for the customers and they are also very happy with it. At the end, it impacts your top line too, right? Because you're going to get more customers happy with you and make business. So it is coming in both ways. The cost savings are much faster to realize. You can make a realization quicker. You can make your business cases faster by showing, the use of AI, and top line will come eventually because that's where you see your customer's experience will also shift. So this is how I am seeing in the industry which I belong to, the use of AI practically started to bring value with the business cases.
Oh, thank you. That's a good segue. Nitin and Ankit, if you would like to add anything to this in your views.
What I see in the industry, AI is expected to bring more trust between consumers, between the organization who's producing products for those consumers and the suppliers. So trust is a primary outcome which everybody is seeking AI to use for. Second, of course, it is driven by transparency. What did I order? What did I get? And is there a fair price at which I am getting? Third is, am I delighted by personalization and any form of customization I can ask for? Even as rigid as a car, can I get my leather seats in a color, in a shape, in a size I want, including the steering wheel customization? Right. So to me, AI is of course driving high scale monetization, but with lot of profitability. Has it achieved right now? It's just a journey. I think it's a new way how every business is reinventing itself, whether it's a large conglomerate with few hundreds of billions of dollars of top line to even a new startup. And that's how to me AI is improving and will continue to improve the intelligence of decision making.
Go ahead,
So,
Ankit.
I think the question is, very deep, right? So I will divide it into two areas, where it is getting, built and how and what's needed, right? So you say decision support, right? Again, two areas what I'm saying, which you also, highlighted, is one is new customer acquisition, new business acquisition, and second is OE, operational efficiency, right? That's the two what probably we are seeing. Again, in new customer acquisition, let me give you an example, right? A sales bot to do probably a Gen AI powered sales bot with human voiced, sort of calling to get new cold calling done. Instead of having 100 people doing that, you can have bot doing the first run, right? That reduces a lot of cost. At the same time, it increases a lot of hit chance, right, for you. That's one example. Similarly, there are a lot of that, right? Again, OE, again, one example is contract manufacturing, right? Contract documentation. There are use cases which people have implemented that has reduced the 45 days to even 2 hours, right? So probably a contract processing take 45 days, now it's 2 hours. Similarly, in cases of drug discovery, there are cases of new molecule finding which takes 6 months to 12 months. People have reduced that to essentially 2 weeks, right? So it's like, giving a lot of power in the hands of the business users. Again, when we build this, there are a lot of, nuances and, areas which we have to take care, right? Again, open versus closed, what are you choosing? If you're choosing closed, what model, how you tune it, fine tune it, what team you have, what data you have, right? And most important, because it's about decision, support system, you have to build those guardrails which should probably hallucinate less, have less error, so that the end user will adopt it. If you, it's like this, you give someone a tool, he will try 1 or 2 times. If you don't give that explainability, that, less hallucination or probably less, error rate, then he will not adopt. After 2-3 times, he will drop it. So you have to build up probably a use case which is so rugged that, it's in the end it is getting adopted. And it's a cycle. It's not in the first run you will do it. It takes few iterations to get to that.
Oh, thanks. That's it. So let me take a point from that trust that Nitin you talked about and adopting the decision that you spoke about. Because we have experienced that somewhere. We built it prediction model for a price of a commodity, and the trading head actually questioned it, saying, if I use the price point that your system is recommending, and if it doesn't happen, am I going to lose my bonus, or is the company going to lose the bonus? There was an actual question asked by one of the business heads. Ravi is smiling, I can see that. He understands the context of this question. So how, this is currently, while we expect the trust to increase, but how do you see people saying, machine has taken a decision, I'm fine with that. Because if I take a decision, I'm willing to live with the right and wrong of it. But machine is taking a decision, right? Are you willing to live right or wrong? I'm okay with that. I have experience of huge challenge on accepting machine as an interested party in giving the decision. So any thought, Mitali, you have on that?
It's an interesting one. Machines are doing so many things these days, right? I'm from the Healthcare Technology Center, and if anybody gets a heart pain, where do we run? To the heart specialist, and what does he do? He puts you to machines again, right? To get it validated. So machines are everywhere, in all sensitive areas where we thought machines will never enter. Machine has entered, right? So somehow a human mind is also shifting. As a consumer, we have more trust on the machines. It is coming somehow naturally. We trust the machine which is giving us an ice cream to a machine which can cook food for you quickly at home. So if we can trust a machine to do so many things, we have also started trusting the machines to manage our bank accounts. Imagine one fine day, all digital traces are gone. Would you ever remember how much of a bank balance you hold and where you hold how much? You won't. It's all managed by machine. Tomorrow they change one zero to the other zero in your bank account to any transaction. Would you have time to go validate everything? These days we make so many UPIs. Do we ever sit down and check the history where the money has gone? We don't. And there are many such movies coming in Netflix about these kind of machine-led trust that we have started to build blindly. So I think as a human, we have to accept it. We are dependent on machines. Machines have entered in every sphere. So if machine can predict for things for us, there is an amount of trust we naturally will get. But machines can also give us a harm, right? It can give you a negative, impact. And that one negative impact can cost you a lot. That one error, which in modeling world, people who do build models knows, right? The accuracy is so important. That one incorrect prediction can cost a lot of penalty to your own company, right? Losses. And in our world, that one incorrect precision prediction can lead to a person's life, right? And we can't let it happen. So you need humans to control, govern, and make sure that machine's trust is validated enough before it's applied. So that you know that what you are entering, you are in a safe zone. So for us in our company, patient safety and quality is paramount, whatever we do. Machines can be trusted, but on top, it's your credibility as humans that once you have applied that intelligence into the machine, it's trusted and people's lives are safe, right? And it goes in food, retail, every industry, right? You take a travel, you want to be safe when you're flying, right? You don't want the flight to, to land somewhere and you're dead. So it's all about, I think at the end, where AI is going is going to be making sure human emotions and human intelligence and humans are safe. So I think that's where it will all bind us.
So the way you're explaining, I think you're saying if the impact is okay, then I can trust it. If it's significant, then I might have a doubt. So coming to Nitin, if you take that perspective, let's say today we are dealing with customers, right? Retail, or banking, or manufacturing. If there's one step in this customer experience that we can remove humans from, nobody's involved, nobody from the company, nobody from whoever is processing it, and the machine will take care of it. If there is one aspect that you could think of, what would that be?
So let me first add to what Mitali just said. So I think the individual who you were speaking earlier about, who asked you this question, about they will lose a bonus or not. To me, I think if that person hasn't flown enough in his life,
This was my customer, by the way.
yeah, so
Not a speaker.
yeah, so whosoever is this person, if I'm assuming he flies to go to from point A to point B, and I'm sure he knows that 95% of the journey is autopilot. However, there is a human in the loop which is called a pilot which is sitting there. So machines today or even in future or foreseeable future are going to give you predictions and forecast. But there is always going to be a human who will take a decision to trust and implement that or not. So to me, that's how the human in the loop model, which I'm sure you would have heard 50 million times from your customers and analysts, is always going to be the method by which AI will progress forward. Coming to your question, what need to be, every industry is removing unnecessary, what I call human intelligence in the process. For example, my last job I was at Z. The content which you see and content which you get recommended to watch and the ads which you see and the type of ads you see are all generated using AI. We never had a set of people who are sitting and curating saying, for Nitin, show this. It's all done by AI. So there is no longer a human in the loop. Very contrasting to how the television broadcasting even work today in Z. In television ecosystem, there are still people deciding it. Which programming, what EPG has to be done, 12:10, what ad has to come, it's all still done by humans. Similarly, in the case of say banking and financing, credit decisioning for regular use cases, lot of human intervention has been eliminated. Only when a decision has to be taken where it is a marginal case is where the credit risk officer has a discretionary power to decide yes and no with zero business influence, because business want to give credit. That's their KRA, to give more credit. But credit risk officer using AI with their decisioning is also applying its human intelligence and saying to do or not to do. Similarly, many other industries are eliminating unduly biased, historically driven intelligence intervention into decision making.
So let me take opportunity to ask Ankit a very different question, which might be of interest to a lot of us here. You are in NASSCOM. NASSCOM has been forefront of not just making sure the ecosystem ticks, but also does a lot of things about how India as a country evolves in terms of when new things come in India, right? So I've worked very closely in the past with Sangeeta and team. How does NASSCOM see this new onslaught of AI? Because we are a very service industry, very, like as a country, we are like $200+ billion services in tech itself. How does NASSCOM see it in terms of what's going to happen? Is there a threat? And keep in mind that we have a lot of workforce which has been in the industry, which is experienced. And the new tech is like pretty new and there's a gap. So how does NASSCOM sees like a future of Indian tech in terms of services sector, in terms of upskilling, reskilling, what's happening? Can you throw some light on that?
Sure, great question. I think India being service-led and AI being a big disruptor, right? I think a lot of things we saw, right, from day one. Like probably when I say day one is probably when the ChatGPT burst happened. So we started a lot of work around that, right? Multiple things started, right? One is, how India as a country should adopt AI, right? When we say adopt AI, it is at various different levels, right? One was how government should catalyze the ecosystem. So a lot of us would know India AI mission is approved. 1.2 billion, 10,000 CR is just approved for that, right? And NASSCOM played a lot of role in that. What that is supposed to do is basically provide 18,000 GPUs for researchers, startups to work on that, right? It will provide a significant amount of funding for startups to build product around AI and Gen AI. It will create a data.
We can use some of this?
Yeah, absolutely. You can. There are.
That'll save my cost.
Yes. I'll come to that, which is very important for you. So it will provide a data platform which will have a lot of government and other data, right? Like Bhashni, the data Kosh, all of that, right? Plus, this one is important. They are also funding LLM foundation model. When I say LLM, is a name, but again, it could be SLM, verticalized model, where you guys and a lot of you folks can apply. And it's monthly approval. Sorry, quarterly approval. Yeah. So, I think many things are happening at that level. Again, skilling is one peak piece, right? So the whole effort of this India mission started 23 March something. We came out with the guardrail, first of its guardrail in the world on Gen AI, and then we parallelly worked with government, and finally it got approved, all of that. At the same time, we also realized there's a lot of skilling, upskilling need for the country. So what we work with the government is a pyramid, right? 4 parts to that pyramid. We need at least, a significant amount of researchers who are working on AI research, right? We found that's a big gap. We said at least we need 10,000 there. Right now we have few hundreds, right? Then we need a bigger pool of people who are data and AI specialists, who are like ML engineers, who are basically Gen AI experts, right? We said that we need 1 million of that. India has around 600K approximately. This is like day one now. We need immediately. And I think a lot of growth has happened. You will soon come to know in our next report, which is coming in a month or so. Then the third tap to that was, we need domain experts who should know AI. A marketing guy knowing AI, optimizing his work, QA guy, all of that, right? So the estimate was that we need at least 40 million of that, right? And then, which is citizen scale understanding of AI, right? Basically people understanding AI, the fallacies of AI, the safety and the guardrails about AI, at least having understanding. Like deepfake can cause a lot of disruption. So we said at least government should work on 100 billion. Government said no, we have to work on billion at least, right? So NASSCOM is working on first, second and third, and to serve president in the fourth one, but again, that's like government work. But researchers, we are working on the AI specialist, we are working with domain expert, right? So I think that's what is being done. But at the same time, I feel it's a big opportunity for us, right? Because I have startups who are working with me, they are a 2-member team, and they have built a fabulous product, right? Profit making. One is a business guy, one is a tech guy. Using Gen AI, they have built a product, right? Similarly, I think so many different point in times, we have come with a technology. As Indians, we have adapted to that, leveraged that, and definitely, thrived on that. We'll be able to do same with the AI and Gen AI, I feel that, yeah.
Thanks. That's great to know. I think it's very important for the workforce. Changing a different topic, Nitin, Mitali, if you can throw some insight into how we can, one of the things we do services for multiple vertical, right? Retail, CPG, industrials, telecom. What are some of the learnings either you have borrowed that you think can be applicable from one industry to others, especially in the context of new AI solution emerging? Any of you, Nitin, Mitali?
I can add my thoughts here. So I think as you are, the panel itself is also cross-industry. Technology is basically actually removing the boundaries between industry, right? I think we can all see it that all industries are going towards somewhat similar technological solutions in their own sectors to solve their customers' problem or their consumers' problem. So from that perspective, technology or tech-enabled solutions are becoming like a common thread binding industries, and hence companies like yours and companies which are in technology sector, which are serving multiple customers or sectors, they have an advantage to definitely demonstrate how some things work in a space of a fast moving business to a, a large delivery cycle business too. So some of the traditional mindset of also assuming sometimes that, this does not work in my sector. You don't know. We hear it a lot in our own company, right? Especially when you're trying to sell something to a region A to a region B, typically the answers you will hear is, I know my market. I know how it works. Don't come and tell me how to do that. So people's experience and sitting on something for a longer duration, sometimes they presume things cannot change. But when you go with the technology-led solutions which you would have shown in some other sector and you try to bring it to a similar sector with the similar concept, I think the openness is there now, and companies like Tridence and others who are in these areas are also helping these sectors to come together, because you have an advantage of applying same thing to multiple sectors, so you show it, right? You show and tell, which otherwise I think it's difficult. It takes a slower path, but it is difficult to get these things faster. And hence I think most of the captives or most of the GCs, Global Capability Centers, want to take advantage of such ecosystem, because they want to scale fast, speed fast, and adopt new technology and solution fast and innovate their business processes. So that's, I think, a very open thing right now, and companies are leveraging these special capability centers for that.
Nitin?
So I think to take forward Mitali's point, I think speed and scale is a common thing everybody wants. And AI to me democratizes that whole process and give equal access and opportunity, whether you are a 2-member company who can disrupt healthcare as compared to a company like Philips, who's been sitting on a gold mine of data, but thinking typically like a European firm, very happy with 1.5% growth annually. So to me, AI is
He's
what...
not happy, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So to me, AI brings that level playing field. And what people are cross-leveraging across is how to monetize data, which was last 10 years story, but nobody actually did anything. It was done pretty much in silos by each department because it is their forte. They assume they are the custodian of the data, and hence everybody created a title called Chief Data Officer in their own companies, and they were pretty happy with it. Now, since the AI as an agenda is driven by boards, no longer a forte of management to decide how the hell they work in a piecemeal basis in a broken environment for their own objective, I see a lot of cross-functional collaboration teams coming, subjected by the board or by the investor, to say enough of your usual way of working, break the silos, cut across the methodology in one unified fashion, and the KRAs of the CEO, as some of the boards where I sit in, have 15 to 20% weightage on their annual bonuses on adoption of AI, either to deliver efficiency or to improve the monetization. And that's a public report. You can pretty much speak to either a BCG or a McKinsey or anybody of the world. And to me, that is what is changing. And that is what will make it a real outcome-oriented adoption rather than the last decade where data was mined for their own objective of doing some incremental innovation.
I just signaled Rekha, our head of HR, to make note of the goal setting and KPI change that is recommended. Shobhi is not here, so I can say all this. Ankit, if you want to add something, because you run like a 300 plus startups in the NASSCOM, and I'm sure they're like across different industries, and they probably, startups are actually disrupting a lot more. Any thoughts that you have based on that experience?
Yeah, I think I will add 2 points just to augment, right? When, companies are adopting AI, there's a lot of same structure they can implement, right? Use cases, domain, all of that can be different, right? First is definitely, define a use case which really is hitting what they want to get, right? Because many people, they start use cases just like that and they don't know where it ends. Second is, have a team and have a partnership, right? Mostly when you try to build something internally, it's very hard because GenAI skills are not available. So have partners like Tridence, have partners like, Microsoft, and then define that in your core strategy. The third piece is data again, right? So when you're building, you cannot open data. You need to have your own internal data, right? So the use case which you choose should have at least a line of sight of data, at least some quantum of that, right? And then definitely the last important part is have a big, governance framework on that whole thing. If you don't have that governance framework, you will, fail miserably. So I think these are 5 steps which apply to all industry, right? If they work on that, I think that's very, very helpful, right? Coming to startup, just to augment this, right? What I feel traditionally in our, big enterprises, when we build, we have a long cycle, right? So, I work with startups, I work startups here, I work startups in Bay Area. What I feel the startups, they're disrupting is the agility, right? Even, for example, I will give an example. There's a startup called Whatnot, right? They are leaders in C2C video selling, right? Profitable startup, a bunch of, I think 100 people started it. So they are releasing features in every week, every 2 weeks, right? When I compare that to even Insta or YouTube, they are slow. When you compare YouTube to probably most of our traditional companies, we will be like, ancient, right? So agility is something what we have to really work on, right? Gone are the days when we, have a 1-year cycle to roll out a feature, right? So in startup, people are doing live production migrations, right? You have strategies, you have to build that, you have to be agile, right? I think that's one thing which is very important. The other part from startups, what industry should, sort of learn, or enterprises should learn is, you should learn from the innovation what they are doing. A lot of innovation, what you do in your industry might, not be suffice for you to go to next level. Let me give you an example, right? A big aerospace company, they were always focused on their industry and their, startup or innovation in that, right? And getting startups from that. When we sat with them, we thought, and what we thought was, can we cross-pollinate? Can we get healthcare startups? Can we get banking startups? Come and pitch and customize that to their industry, right? So the innovation can come from anywhere, right? You should be ready to have an open mind and adopt. And then definitely have startup as your innovation partner. So I think that's very important. Otherwise, if you self-innovate, you can do, definitely you can do. We are all capable. But it will take more lead time and cycle time, right? You'll be late in the agility, yeah?
No, thanks. I mean, one of my favorite thing I used to tell people is learn the customer experience from retail and security and compliance from banking, right? You'll be able to do the best of the breed. So coming to the last part, I wanted to just, maybe we can start with Nitin. What do you think will either delay it or trip this whole adoption of AI in your mind? And what do you think can stop us from adopting this? And when I say adopting means it has to become mainstream, everybody does it. That's the only way we function.
So I think first thing is talent, availability of talent and the speed at which people can upskill their existing talent to the desired level so that they are productive to deliver outcomes. Second is, of course, the data governance frameworks. That is always a gray area at this point in time, as we see in every day new entities coming and claiming it to be faster, cheaper and safe. So there has to be a governance mechanism by which you have quick validation. Policy changes for putting legal guardrails is definitely required for it to become a mainstream. And for startup ecosystem, definitely access to risk capital is a very big need. We missed 2 decades in India for the same reason, and hopefully with AI now being here and for good, I hope risk capital accessibility becomes better, and NASSCOM plays a tremendous role in making Indian, I would say, traditional owners to open up their wallets to collaborate with startups to adopt them into their mainstream products. So to me, if these 3-4 things are taken care, I think we should pretty much be on a good path going forward.
Thanks, Nitin. Ankit?
Yeah. So I think we have done a study on this, right? So what is the inhibitor for adoption of AI? Again, what Nitin said is almost on the same lines. Let me give some numbers on that, right? Talent is the biggest piece, or one of the biggest piece. I'll give you some numbers. The current need of data and skill set in India is around 8 lakh as a resources, right? And the current capacity available is 6,50,000, right? If you go to US, the need is around, I think, 9 lakh something. or 900K in their language. But again, the point is that they have, I think around 780 to 800K resources. So there's a big shortage. And if you go to other countries, they're not even existing in few thousands. Probably the biggest will be UK, probably Germany, some thousands here and there, right? No one touches any of that parameter. So, and in the Bay Area or probably the US also, if I see two hotspots, Silicon Valley is a big hotspot, Bangalore is a second big hotspot, right? Again, 65,000, 70,000 people are there. Here we have around 70 something, same. The point what is that, again, there you have a big, base of Indians who are working this field, right? So India as a talent powerhouse for the world is very much possible. We have to make it. And I think the whole world will look upon to India for powering this. That's the first one. The second biggest issue is data, right? Data is the big inhibitor for any adoption, right? Again, a lot of data points available, again, I will not take there. So you would know better than me, right? So the third point is, a clear, a mandate from the top management and ROI out of project, right? A lot of project, I think you would also know, they, drop in the way, right? So it has to be iterative again, but again, that's the third piece. The fourth biggest piece, which is to our surprise and, very important, is the regulatory uncertainty, right? Now, we have one biggest regulation in Europe called AIA, right? We have here DPDPA coming in, right? But again, AI still, it's an, unknown cookie. So probably Biden had different strategy, Trump has different strategy, here RC had different strategy, now the current guy has different strategy, right? So I think regulatory uncertainty is playing a big role. I think there are four top areas.
Thanks. Mithali?
I think already Nitin and Ankit has covered most of it. Talent, data, regulations, right? Regulations are very important. One more thing that I see now, whatever said and done, doing an AI solution or adding a GenAI is an expensive solution. It takes cost. There is a cost associated. Once you build it, you have to sustain it, operationalize it, and things are moving very fast. So what we are experiencing is, although businesses want to use it, there is a cost attached. So they have to be ready to shed their pocket to use it. Once you use it, you need to have a customer who buys it. Just adding it doesn't make sense, right? So, so that's the element which we are watching. Second, a lot of it is what we see is that it's applicable for North America or a regional specific things. China wants to do something on their own. North America is wanting to lead the market. India has such a great talent pool. India is thinking, where are we? Why are we not bringing such solutions in the market faster, right? Tomorrow it will be other regions as well. So I think that's the last element I would say, where there is a kind of a competition which has started now in the world, where people want to make their own. They want to keep their data in their own country, in their own region, and they want to secure their people, their customer, in their own geography. This is becoming a very big constraint for us to globalize solutions, standardize solution. Although we believe one technology or one solution can be globalized, but global regulations will stop us from doing that. So local for local, local for global. So that's to watch out for and watch the space coming. I don't have the answers, but yes, these are going to be continuous challenges.
No, fabulous point. I think we are probably not even aware of what all risk which will come. And like Nitin is a very positive person, realized like we have to go and do it and then figure out. And thank you. I think it was a great discussion. Thank you very much, all of you. I think we covered a lot of ground in terms of what we...
Thank you.
Thank you.